Hello, sisters, and welcome to Go Solo Live. This is Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel. It's time to sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy my conversation with Becky Gillespie as she shares about her time in Tokyo and New Zealand and 53 countries total.
Welcome to Go Solo Live.
Don't you mean go solo live? Have you ever been asked why on earth would you travel alone? Go Solo Live not only answers that question, but celebrates life as a midlife solo traveler. This is a safe place for women to come together to reminisce about their travels, encourage others to travel, and to dig into the real lessons learned from these journeys. Now join Jennifer Buchholz with Transform Via Travel as she and her guests share stories of the solo travelers of midlife women.
Joining us today is Becky Gillespie, and she is in one of my favorite towns, though it is going through some challenging times right now. She's in Christchurch, New Zealand. Welcome, Becky.
Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. It's great to have you here. So you're actually also known as Tokyo Becky, and I think we're going to start right with that. Is how did you come to land in Tokyo when you started in Ohio?
Really good question. And actually, no one in my family ever expected this. But I was, to be honest, I had seen the movie Lost in Translation. I don't know if you've seen it with Bill Murray, Scarlett Johansson. Now it seems like it's been a while since this movie came out. But I'd seen it the year before. I thought about Tokyo. And then by chance, this English teaching company, for the very first time, came to my university. I was graduating that year, and I went to this career fair. And they were there, and it was like year of adventure in Japan. And I thought 1 year, Tokyo seems pretty cool. I'll try it. And it just all worked out from there. 3 months later, I was on a plane to Tokyo.
No kidding. That seems fast. And you were just graduating college at the time.
That's right. I was a finance major and an English literature major. So I did have some, interest in English itself, but I was trying for some finance jobs, but my heart wasn't in it. I felt like I'm not ready to just settle into a job yet. 1 year out and traveling the world, especially a place like Tokyo, would be amazing. And
that sounds awesome. So your plan was 1 year. So how did that go over with your family?
The hardest person to convince was my grandmother. To be fair, she had had this slow form of cancer, this slow moving form that could never be cured, but was just being treated over 8 years. And so the first thing she said to me was, "You may never see me alive again if you go." And you just, you just have to kind of think of this is a 1 year thing, and it's already been 8 years. I'm sure I'll see you again, Grandma. And I did, by the way. But she actually died 3 years later. But I proved to her that you can come back and you can do this on your own. So
it's hard though, like the guilt, when you're halfway across the world.
Yes. And we just didn't know, especially with Grandma, we had no idea how long she would live or not. So, and with any of us, I should say, I could have, that on the corner that weekend, had a car accident. You just never know.
You never know. So, and I think that's part of it is if you let those types of things get in your way, then you're never going to go anywhere.
Right. That's right.
So it's hard, but it is real.
It's hard. You have to take what they say with a grain of salt, but kind of, keep that all in as part of it. Don't focus on that, like maybe negative or fearful statement. Don't let it change maybe what you feel is your real intention.
Well, and let's take a second and put some context around what day and age was this. So, in this day and age, even grandmothers are a little bit more comfortable with things like Skype or different technological ways to stay in touch. But when you started your first journey to Tokyo, how old were you? And then what year are we talking about?
I was 22. I'm 35 now, by the way, but I was 22 and it was September 2004. So you had the internet starting. I mean, you still had very basic web pages and, Skype, I wasn't even a thing yet. I remember Google was just coming out, and Grandma certainly didn't have a computer. So.
Right. So, again, I love putting context around it though, for our listeners come from all different age groups, and it's important that they keep in mind, the same situation happening right now where your daughter or granddaughter might say, I'm going to go study for a year in Tokyo. doesn't feel as far away as it did 13 years ago.
Absolutely. Travel has changed completely since then.
And some of that to me, I feel is good. And some of that maybe not so good, because there is something to be said. I don't know many people nowadays who are able to actually get away from work, who are actually able to really disconnect. So you got to take the good with the bad, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. Some of my favorite years of travel were actually those days before there was a sign saying, like us on Facebook at every, place you stayed across the world.
That's exactly it. And yet, hasn't it made, having traveled like you do and still being what I would call one of the youngers in my audience, tell me how social media has allowed you for some other connections and has allowed you possibly to, I know people who stay in contact with people and then go travel to their homes, and it makes the world a little bit smaller in that way too.
Yeah. So one thing that I've started doing is using Instagram for the different places to look for in a city. Sometimes it gets it's almost too cliche, because if you go to those places you see on Instagram, there might be a lot of other people waiting for you when you get there, taking photos as well. But it's that, plus it's like forums on TripAdvisor, things like that. It's just much easier to find things to do when you're traveling. You could never really get bored.
Absolutely.
So
that's for sure. That's for sure. So
Facebook groups as well.
Right? Yeah. Do you have a favorite that you would share?
I like to go to the website Girls Love Travel.
Okay.
I think there's over 100,000 members. It's just, you get a lot of different ideas of where people are traveling and problems they're facing. It seems like everybody gets open on this forum. It's easy to join. It's not like a selective group at all.
Excellent. No, that's great. You never know which groups are going to resonate most with people. So it's always helpful to have a handful of options available. So that's great. Girls Love Travel.
Yeah.
So tell me what it was like being in Tokyo for your first major trip like that. And you had already done a study abroad. We'll come back to that in a little bit. So you weren't brand new to travel, but this is a big deal.
That's
Moving
right.
versus visiting is a big deal.
It's totally different. That's for sure. Well, the reason I felt okay with Tokyo, besides seeing it in a film, which I know is a little bit different, was because I had looked and researched a lot about how safe it was for women and how safe it was as a country in general. And I can tell you now, I've been to 53 countries. Japan is the safest one that I've been to. So I kind of started in the safest place. You can really go jogging at 3 a.m. Nothing's ever going to happen to you. There are no guns in the country. They're very strict against drug use, which prevents a lot of these incidents as well. So yeah, that comforted me a lot. And the fact that my company that had hired me was going to meet me at the airport and guide me step by step to company housing that they had already set up for me. So it was very easy at that time to get into it. And I had my Australian roommate who was sharing the apartment. She greeted me at the train station from that moment that I arrived and walked me to our place. I mean, it couldn't have been more guided at that first touchdown. So
well, and that first impression makes a huge difference.
Yes, completely. And I clicked with her. We were we've been friends now for over 10 years. So yeah, just got lucky there, but, or not. I mean, maybe you just have to have an open attitude, an open mind about it. So
did you find the language barriers to be an issue?
Yes. So, and even now today, because I didn't train or study Japanese formally before I went, there's always elements of the writing that are going to be mysterious to me because I was working a full-time job after the whole time. So it was hard to get deep into the writing of Japanese after work, once I was there. So you never get on a very deep level if that's the level of your language skills. But also, there's a lot of, in Japan especially, there's a lot of unspoken understanding that you're supposed to kind of what they call read the air and just kind of know what they're really saying. But yeah, I'm not always good at that because I'm American. We say things directly. Yeah. So
I love that. Yeah, I love the idea though, read the air. Okay. Yes, it seems so very, very obscure. This is actually a phrase that is used and
yeah. Oh yeah. So there's a phrase he doesn't read the air well.
Wow.
So yeah. it's very unspoken. And there's a lot of things that are left unsaid. So it's a very quiet culture. I've actually had friends visit and say, I am so shocked that Tokyo, being so busy and so many people, is such a quiet place. So
that is something, to feel that way. Like you have a perception of what you expect that busy urban area to be, and then it's not meeting that.
That's right. Yeah.
So what were some of the biggest surprises you had about Tokyo?
First of all, like how much I love the food. The food is like a major reason to go to Tokyo, and everybody will sometimes, like everybody says that it's, impossible to hate sushi once you have it in Tokyo, I would say. So the food, I just loved all of the food. I liked everything I tried, and that actually surprised me, but it continued to the whole time I was living there. And just how clean everything is. It's unbelievable. I guess there's a lot of like old elderly neighbors that come out early in the morning and like just sweep the streets on their own accord. And just, you'll see train station workers just constantly sweeping the stairs. And for a place that's so populated, it is so clean. And the other thing I would say is how honest people are when you lose something. Because you can drop your wallet on the ground full of cash and someone will just pick it up and, turn it into a train station or a police station and you'll get it back. I once dropped, I think I dropped my wallet in the middle of a festival next to a temple, and I realized it 10 minutes later, came back, it was just still on the ground in the middle of all these people. So it's a place where it's true. I mean, even to this day, that never changed while I lived there. So people leave their purses on the table and go to the bathroom at Starbucks or cafes. That's just normal. So that is amazing.
It makes me think when you talk about the idea of neighbors coming out and sweeping the streets, it makes me think of just the general society there is much less individualistic. It's more collective and community based. So
exactly.
They all feel this responsibility for making that community what they want it to be.
That's right. And I once heard someone say, Tokyo has obviously been through a lot with World War II and they haven't had a major earthquake in many, many years, but they have, earthquakes from time to time. And the city, because of all this history, doesn't look that beautiful, in my opinion. They do their best to make the inside spaces beautiful. And so they want to make it as comfortable as they can.
Well, and I guess in some ways it's just a trade-off, and there's only so much that is within their control. So they work on what's within their control. So how did you find, you found the, society in general, we were talking about, what was the community that you entered into as part of your role over there?
So for me, it kind of felt like the university experience that I never had, because I was working a part-time job at a movie theater all of the university. So I wasn't in a sorority. I didn't join a lot of clubs that I may have joined in university. But once I was greeted by my coworker at this company, it was called Nova, teaching English. Nova had 900 schools across Japan. And so you'd meet all these teachers there from all over the world, mostly native English speakers and, just teachers that were close to your age. Some of them were in their 30s and 40s. But it was just a wide spectrum, and it just felt so easy to meet people, at least in that community. So the foreign community was easy to access, I thought.
That sounds fantastic. What were some of the challenges that you ran into?
I would say my working hours at the time, sometimes like certain things weren't open, like going to the doctor the first time was really hard because, knowing medical words in a language is always challenging. But again, like this whole unspoken nature of the Japanese language, sometimes people would say you have this, but really they may have meant something else when you're trying to get a diagnosis, or they'd give you instructions in Japanese. Funny story, true story. I once went for an annual health check, and I was getting, I didn't know what I was going to get for my next stage of the health check. And I walk in, and so all I hear, what I think I hear is take off everything. And so there was a hospital gown, and I took off absolutely everything and put on just the hospital gown, which of course stopped just below my hips. And I walk in, and the elderly male doctor like kind of covers his eyes and is like, oh, pants. In Japanese, he's saying, pants, pants. And I'm like, there were no pants. And he's like, your pants, put them on now. And so I put them on, and then I walk back in for a chest x-ray. What I find out is a chest x-ray. I mean, he saw everything. He saw the hoo-ha, as we say. I don't know. So that was one of my funniest lost in translation moments.
That's pretty great. I mean, I don't know many that could beat that story. So it's pretty great. Holy cow.
Yeah, also, it's also very common in Japan. I love this part of the culture now, but the first time it was tough. They love to go to hot springs.
Yes.
And it's just part of their culture. But when you go to a hot spring in Japan, you go to the locker room and everybody's naked. They're changing, you know, they just have a little towel and a bigger towel, but they walk into these hot springs naked. It's separated by gender, but that's how you do it. It's a faux pas to go in with a bikini or anything. So I was nervous at first, being an American girl, but you get used to it. And then next thing you know, you're doing it with your coworkers or people fresh off the plane from America. You're trying to take them into a hot spring naked.
That is awesome.
That's
I think
funny.
I haven't been to any of the Asian countries yet, but my experience with something similar was actually in New Zealand, in Rotorua, at one of the springs. And there was a large Asian population that came as a group all at once. And I was definitely having culture shock. I thought, I have no idea how this is working right now. If it's their culture, New Zealand culture, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to just go with my gut. And I still wore a swimsuit.
No, you did the right thing, because I think I went to those same hot springs in Rotorua just a few weeks ago. And no, you're supposed to, always in New Zealand, you're supposed to wear what they call togs or bathing suits or something. But yeah, like Chinese, Taiwanese, Japanese, that's not what they do in those countries. So they would have thought, hey, that's what everybody does, right?
Right. Well, and it's just the things that we really do take for granted, though. And so when we are confronted with them in another country, it does cause a moment of pause to say, this is different. I wonder why.
Right.
And at least to note it and say, okay, I might look into that a little bit later.
Yeah, it's just every country has their own thing. In Japan, they really are afraid of tattoos. So you're not often allowed to go into hot springs if you have any tattoos on your body. So people will try to hide them with like a Band-Aid or like a patch to try to get into these hot springs, but it's associated with the Japanese mafia historically. So especially elderly Japanese are really afraid if they see a tattoo. So it's just, you wouldn't think that until you go to into the culture. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and then when you're seeing in New Zealand, everybody has a tattoo.
Right. So then I'm like, okay, this is okay, but you have to wear bathing suits. Naked is not okay. And each country has their own rules.
Exactly. So let's go through, how long did you stay in Tokyo?
I had actually 3 different stints in Tokyo, and each of them were about 3 to 4 years. And now I have permanent residency there. So I'm currently not in Japan, but I have to go back once a year to keep the permanent residency. And I just left Japan in November last month. So this is a new thing for me, but yeah, I can buy property there. I can live there permanently and work for any company now with this permanent residency visa. So over 10 years in total.
As time went on and you kept, taking on these new stints, how did your family feel? They get a little bit used to it, conditioned to it, but that's a big gap from the Midwest in the US over to Japan.
It really is. I mean, I always came home for 2 to 3 weeks at Christmas time. And as time went on, I started making sure to see my family about 6 months into the year somewhere. We started meeting, in the middle, so to speak. Like we met and went to Alaska once, and I actually saw my mother this summer. I took her to the Holy Land for the first time, which was so special, such a wonderful trip for her. And so I think I've made my mother more adventurous as well with travel. And now they're just used to it. They know that I must be a traveler. So much more. I just bungee jumped actually about a week ago in Queenstown.
Okay.
And my mother saw the video and she just said, I think you're ready for the amazing race. I thought she'd freak out, but she's like, nope, she's like, don't kill yourself before you come home, but I think you're ready for the amazing race.
Well, and if you're going to jump, you just have to jump in somewhere in New Zealand. It doesn't quite matter where.
Yes, you're right. It was a well-oiled machine. They made me feel so calm because they do it how many times a day?
So I was only going to do it over water. So I did it at Taupo.
Oh, what a beautiful place to do it.
It was quite amazing, but I didn't really realize. I'm like, put on my brave face. It was a group of students. They needed one more to get the discount. I'm like, fine, I'm going to go. I'm number 2 in the group because I knew if I were last, I wouldn't go. But we also only had so much time. And I knew me being so afraid was holding up the line. And I got to the edge and I was not going down feet first. I was holding my cord and they said, well, make sure you guide it to your shoulder. Otherwise it'll snap back and break your nose. I'm like, that's my biggest concern right now is walking around with a broken nose. It was just funny, but they were definitely a well-oiled machine. And I jumped and it was amazing. And I've done it once, so I don't know that I need to do it again. But walking back up, our tour leader and bus driver just kind of said, did you know that you were shaking your head no the entire time you were out on that platform?
Oh my goodness.
So I knew that was not something that I really needed to do. So I love that adventure. I'm going to check that one off my list.
See, I know you talked to me about scuba diving, and scuba diving for me is scarier than bungee jumping. So everybody's got their fear, but I think it's important to face your fears slowly if that's how you have to start. But it'll get easier. It'll get
Absolutely.
better.
And you practice, you test your comfort zone, and that's awesome. So I love that you've now landed in New Zealand, which is one of my favorite places in the entire universe. And
Jennifer, I have to tell you, it's the most beautiful country in the world. This is number 53 for me, but it really is. I'm so glad I finally got here and that I'm still hopefully able to go again. Didn't save it for retirement because there's so much beauty to see.
What is your plan for tackling this area? How long are you there, or where are you going?
I've been here for 4 weeks and I have 1 week left on this trip. And I waited until I quit my job in Japan actually to give this country that much time, because that was the only way I would be able to have that much time.
And so you started where? I know you're on the South Island right now, so you're actually in Christchurch. And if we hear any background noise, that's because Christchurch is still rebuilding from earthquakes in 2010 and 2011. And so there's construction noise going on around, and we've been very fortunate on our recording so far, but just in case that comes up.
Yeah, it's everywhere in the city, unfortunately. I started in Auckland, but Auckland was just for a few days, and then, immediately went to Hobbiton, basically. I think everybody wants to go to Hobbiton when they're here in New Zealand. So Hobbiton was close to Rotorua. So Hobbiton and Rotorua early on. Rotorua, for those who don't know, is basically a volcanic little city or area. It's this like bubbling up there's hot springs everywhere, just bubbling up. And there's a lot of Maori culture as well, which is really interesting to experience there.
So the culture is amazing. They also have some fun adventure stuff there. Did you do the luge or the zorb or anything fun like that?
No, but I've done a zorb before, and you have to do the zorb,
right?
Yeah.
But because of the geothermal activity, there's also a pretty regular smell of sulfur throughout that whole town. So it's one of those things of I love going there, but when I'm done, it's like, yeah, we're good, because you can just tell that you've been in Rotorua.
That's right. My advice is to hop on over to Waitomo, which is about like a 2-hour drive away, where you can see the glowworm caves. That's been one of my favorite things to do there, and you can't skip it. It's amazing.
So ironically, I've been there 3 times and I have not seen it. And on the trip that we're planning with a group in January of 2019, that is definitely on the agenda.
I can recommend Kiwi cave rafting. They'll combine like 5 different activities for you in one trip, like abseiling. Then you abseil down into the cave. You get on an inner tube and do what they call blackwater rafting down a little river in this cave in the dark. And then they'll also put you through these little squeezers, which are tight, narrow spaces, and see if you can get through. It's optional. I will say it's not something you have to do to get through the cave, but it was pretty fun. And also then you rock climb out, and then you see these glowworms as well. And it's like, that was a nice combo experience. So Kiwi Cave Rafting, it's a family run company. So
I have made a note. Thank you very much for that recommendation.
Yeah.
What have you loved and what have you learned as you've been in New Zealand?
I have loved the nature so much. Coming from Tokyo, where it's a great city, but there's not a lot of trees, and you're often in a little tube on a train. So here, just the farmland, the rolling hills, the mountains. Oh my God, I love mountains, but just so many different landscapes here in one small country. It's just amazing. I can't believe yesterday I was actually walking on a glacier. But a week before I was bungee jumping into a gorge and, seeing penguins and there's just so much to see here. So that's something I loved. I haven't loved the, I guess it is certain parts are very touristy because there's a lot of small towns. So sometimes you can see, too many photos being taken in one small place, or I guess some things can be expensive, but I don't have much to say about that because I just came from Tokyo. There's not much to hate about New Zealand. It's amazing.
I know. And that's why it keeps calling me back. I think each time I go, I'm discovering something different about the place. I'm discovering something different about myself. And I think it creates this environment for inquiry and discovery just by being the country that it is. Is that weird?
No, it's not weird at all. I totally get it. And I want to come back. I would love to come back once a year, but and I have to tell you and the listeners, you should really come the last week of November, or let's say first or second week of December, if you can, because the lupins are in full bloom right now. And the lupins are actually a weed, but they are just this burst of color, just blooming all over, especially near Lake Tekapo on the South Island. There are a lot of them. And if you can rent a car and drive, along and stop and take photos, just get amongst all of this gorgeous burst of color of the lupins. I'm going to post a photo on Instagram in a few days, but we caught these beautiful fields of just 10 different colors of lupins. And if you Google it, it's a very famous thing, but it's only for 3 to 4 weeks a year. You can see this. So
that is awesome. So again, those are things that you only get to experience when you are in a place for a longer period of time. And you're out interacting with the space, not just running from point A to point B, but you're actually taking it in, taking a breath, looking around, seeing all 360 degrees. I wonder what they call it when it's not just 360 around in a circle, but it's actually the full globe of your vision. I'm going to have to think about what that would be.
The full spectrum. Yeah.
There we go. I was in Denver not that long ago, and it was time for the monarch migration. And I had never seen so many monarchs. And it's something that happens for them every year. So it's something that they kind of take for granted. They think it's cool. But as a tourist being in Denver, we were doing a walking tour throughout the city, and to see these monarchs everywhere, it was just this stunning thing that if I'd just been trying to get from point A to point B, I would have missed.
Yeah, I really love slow travel more and more the older I get. If you can, I recommend travel in any form, but if you can do slow travel, maybe pick your favorite country, maybe New Zealand's climbing up there. Set aside your long-term travel for your favorite country that you've most wanted to go to if you can.
Agreed. So tell me a little bit about what your lifestyle is like. You said that you just left your job in Tokyo. You're traveling right now, coming home to spend time with family for the holidays. Then what's next?
So I have an unusual lifestyle now, but this just started as of the second week of November. So I'm now working online. I'm location independent from beginning of November. And this is going to sound shocking. I've worked every day in New Zealand, actually. But my job allows me to do work anywhere, even on buses. So I was traveling with a friend for part of the time here in New Zealand, and we chose not to rent a car so that I could work on the buses.
Perfect.
And it's just great. You stop for tea. Yep. So I will go home for 3 weeks and then go on to South America from there. I love Buenos Aires, Argentina. It'll be my third time there. But a friend and I are renting an Airbnb for a month down there in January. We're going to try to write ebooks. We don't know exactly what the topics will be yet, but we're just going to try to hunker down for a month and see what we can make happen, because we've both been there before. So we won't feel such an urgent need to travel around all the time like I've done here in New Zealand. So
that sounds fantastic. So you're still working, you're getting paid. You know, it's not like you're one of those rebellious millennials that nobody likes to talk about who just want to go travel. Like, you feel this sense of responsibility to work.
I think it's maybe because I'm now in my mid-30s. I don't know. I've definitely done that type of travel before, and it's great. It's my friend traveling with me actually wasn't working, so she got to like really stare out the window and like enjoy, you know, these times. But I was working, but trying to enjoy at the same time. And I did. I just had to do it a little bit differently. So yeah, it felt freeing though, because I could pay for a bungee jump, you know, and not feel so much guilt about it. So.
I love it. So Buenos Aires is next, and is that going to be maybe a home base for you down there that you're going to mostly stay at and then head out to go and navigate? Or are you really, really trying to hunker down there?
That's going to be a base, but only for about a month. And then after that, I'm going to move on to, a little construction there. I'm going to move on to probably Colombia. I've never been to Colombia, but I have a friend there, and also just wanting to see some of the country. It's eternal spring in Colombia, apparently. So there is not a bad time to go based on its location.
Here's what's ironic is that I record all of our podcast episodes. I do them in a batch. And so I get in the groove of it. And you are now the second person to talk to me today about Colombia. And the guest on the earlier episode was indicating that she has now fallen in love with Colombia. It's her new favorite country. So be careful.
Oh my goodness.
I've been to Colombia twice, once pre-treaty and now post-treaty, and I'm bidding on additional work down there. So it's very funny. Here's what I learned when I went. I thought Colombia, close to the equator, pack light, right? Mm-hmm. What I didn't think is Bogota, elevation, freaking cold.
Oh, okay. Thank you for that tip, because yeah, I was like, oh, I can wear like t-shirts and, you know, maybe long pants. All right.
So my experience is that
New Zealand.
yeah, pack a variety, just or depending on where you're going. But I only was in Bogota, and so there were days where I was wearing every single piece of clothing that I had brought because it was so cold.
Oh man, I just heard so many good things about Colombia that, you know, no matter what it's going to be. I've heard that the people are so friendly and the place is so beautiful.
The people are great. The food is amazing. I don't drink coffee, but if I did, that would have been cool.
Oh, Jennifer. No.
I know. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. But yeah, so it sounds like, you know, we're going to have to really stay connected with some of the travel that you're doing. And I appreciate some of the tips that you've been sharing so far.
Yes. It's so much fun to talk about travel.
Where are you finding your travel partners? Are these people that you've known like from school, or are they people you're meeting along the way who are you then connecting with?
It's a variety, but this was really interesting, this past New Zealand traveling partner, because she was kind of a friend of friends in Tokyo, and she heard about my trip I was going to do solo, and she asked if she could join me for 6 weeks. And I was at first like, whoa, that's a long time to travel with anybody. But I eventually said, you know what, this is going to be really good for her as well. She's a much less experienced traveler. So she kind of came to me, and often people come to me because they kind of know that I'm all right with solo travel. I've always been like, you know, you're never going to find the right time, the right money. Just go, just be able to go. But I have experience with this by now. So, you know, the first time I did it, I wasn't very confident. But yeah, a lot of people come and find me, friends of friends or friends already.
That's awesome. I love it. So for somebody who is, you can speak to whichever audience is going to best resonate with you. You can speak to that 22-year-old who's thinking, I'm not quite ready to settle into my role that I trained for with my degree, and I'm thinking about exploring the world. Or you can speak to that 35-year-old who's ready for something different. What would you say to somebody who's on the brink of making that decision about solo travel and what that does for the person?
I found that, you know, you're never alone, and actually you will be approached a lot less when you're traveling with one other person. So I would say to those people, like, travel opens you up, and it really will give you incredible self-confidence if you can just take those first steps. It helps you learn how to problem solve as well. And it will force you to handle uncomfortable situations and get through them and realize that you're still going to be okay. And I think it also takes up your normal. You might feel really stuck in some routine, but travel is always going to be new every day. Something's going to happen unexpected. And it's going to just allow new perspectives to come into your life. And you never know who you're going to meet. You just have to take that first step. So don't panic if something does go wrong. There will be a way out of it. I've had some situations where I was like, how is this going to resolve itself? And it always does. So
absolutely. That is fantastic. Well, let's make sure that people know where to find you, Becky, so they can keep following you and your adventures.
Sure. So I am Tokyo Becky on Instagram, no space, and that's BECKY. And I'm the same. I have a blog, which I'm going to be honest, I haven't updated it since June, but hopefully there's plans to start talking about my world travel. It's tokyobecky.com.
Fantastic. So it will be Tokyo and more.
Tokyo and more. I'm actually thinking of a new name. So we'll see how this goes.
Are you planning to go back and really land again in Tokyo for an extended period of time now that you have your citizenship and you have a work role that allows you location freedom?
It's definitely a possibility, at least a month, a year, if not longer. So I still have ties to some of my old jobs as well. So I may work from time to time for them.
Sure.
So,
that's great.
So I may keep it. I do have a long connection with Tokyo and I do love it. It's one of my favorite places in the world.
That's fantastic. Well, again, with that kind of experience with 53 countries under your belt and more to come, I think people need to follow you just to see what you're up to next. So thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story.
Thank you so much, Jennifer.
Wasn't it great to hear the stories that Becky shared with us today? I love the concept of slow travel. It's not just about getting to the destination. It's about the journey along the way and truly appreciating it with your eyes fully open. If you love these stories and want to help support Go Solo Live, you can do that by making a small financial contribution to the show via patreon.com/Go Solo Live. That's Patreon. There's some fun gifts and prizes for appreciation. We've reached the end of another episode, but the conversation doesn't have to end there. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Go Solo Live. And if you're interested in being a guest, send me an email at jennifer@transformviatravel.com. Until next time, remember, go solo, not alone.